Your latest collaboration with Majid Nawaz is brilliant and timely. I am, however, concerned about your lack of acknowledgement of the factors of the long-time intrusion of Western powers into the Middle East and the effect these military and corporate intrusions have on the people of the region. I've been a follower of the likes of Noam Chomsky and Michael Parenti and Howard Zinn long before being introduced to you, and he goes on to talk about their influence. I've always felt that your ideas intersect without conflict with most of the ideas of these people. Yet I know there's a professional and sometimes personal conflict between you and some of them. I see the sources of behavior of extreme Islam coming out of many different places: global capitalism, military action, culture, religion, and I could not guess which is the most important, but I see each of them as having a significant role. So my question to you is, does your dismissal of the matters of corporatism and imperialism come from believing that they are insignificant factors in the conflict we are having with Islam, extreme Islam, or is it a tactical reaction to the lack of voice given to critiquing extreme Islam and its destructive effects? Or am I asking the question in a wrong way? This is from Dean Richard. No, good question. And I agree with you that, as you say, my ideas intersect without conflict with most of the ideas of those people. And that's why I've said, when I initially criticized Chomsky in The End of Faith, I said, you can accept 90% of what he's saying and still follow the plot here with respect to jihadism and with respect to the role of religion generally in the lives of people. And there are some ways in which I do agree with him and think that the behavior of the U.S. government and U.S. corporations has been appalling. If you want to see an instance of that, listen to my interview on this podcast with Joshua Oppenheimer about his films, The Act of Killing and The Look of Silence, which detailed our horrible support for a genocide in Indonesia. Yeah, my lack of focus on those topics is due to two things. One is, I think we are now living in a time where a belief in what you're calling extreme Islam, and in particular in the doctrines around jihad and martyrdom and blasphemy and apostasy and expectation of paradise, all of these ideas are sufficient to produce the most destructive and intolerable behavior. They're sufficient to produce ISIS. They're sufficient to produce a foreign-born and otherwise completely inexplicable support for a group like ISIS. And we can't ignore that problem. Yes, there are many other problems in the world. And depending on who you're talking about, these problems can be exaggerated. I think describing the U.S. and Britain as the most evil forces on earth is absolutely delusional and dangerous and masochistic and leads nowhere worth going. Just imagine electing a president who believed that the U.S. and Britain were the most evil actors in human history or in recent history. It's just, you want someone who agrees with Chomsky on that topic? So, I don't agree with the underlying claim, but any particular piece of this puzzle is worth talking about and focusing on. I have just been worried that people have been deluding themselves about the link between religious belief and behavior. And in many cases, it is in fact the only thing that explains the behavior. Again, I'm not denying that jihadists sometimes have actual political grievances that are rational. There's that too. But that doesn't get you ISIS. That doesn't get you people who have no rational demands. That doesn't get you Boko Haram that's just killing school children because they're going to school, right? That's not a normal political grievance. There you're talking about the influence of religious extremism on the human mind. And you can see this in miniature in cults. Listen to the podcast I did on Heaven's Gate, right? And watch those exit interviews with those well-educated and apparently happy people just before they committed suicide, expecting to wind up on a spacecraft following the comet Hale-Bopp. And ask yourself, why did they do what they did? Was it because they were politically oppressed? Was there some foreign policy infraction that had just gotten under their skin and drove them to this? No, they had specific beliefs that they articulated ad nauseum, and in light of those beliefs, their behavior made perfect sense, right? That is the problem we are facing with jihadism. And it's not to say that there aren't other problems in the world, and there's not to say there aren't other problems of our own making But if you're going to lose sight of this fact, that some people believe in paradise and want to get there, you are going to be mystified and constantly vulnerable in the presence of these people. So it is a matter of emphasis for me. But sometimes emphasis is everything. And when you get Noam Chomsky talking about how we're the most evil people on earth, and the most important thing for us to do morally is to take responsibility for our evil, rather than resist creeping theocracy that is destabilizing dozens of countries at this moment, that seems to me to be purely crazy. Yes, feel free to spend some time looking inward at your own misogyny, right? But if you really care about women, it's the little girls who are getting bullets in their heads for going to school, or their faces burned off with battery acid for leaving their husbands. That's real misogyny. It's not the stray remark about Hillary's hairdo that you should be worried about. In any case, that's the way I see it.